Hey guys, my name is Chris W. Lau and I'm the label manager for the upcoming festival music label, Intensity Recordings. Previously, I was a label manager for Loca Recordings and I founded the EDM publication, the QR Network. Today, I'm here with Quarantine Production Talks to discuss some of my experiences in being a label manager, as well as the importance of networking and some of the challenges EDM labels are facing today. So a little bit about myself. I stumbled into the EDM scene through the glitch mob popping up on my Pandora radio for Timbaland, of all people. At the time, it was so eye-opening for me that I went down a SoundCloud rabbit hole and eventually found my love for festival music. I started with Melbourne Bounce, and that led me into big room, bass house, future house, psytrance, hardstyle, and anything in between. It wasn't until about 2018 that I got into the EDM industry. I was looking for more information on some of the artists that I listened to and was really disappointed by some of the EDM blogs that I found, because essentially all they were doing is copy and pasting PR blasts from their email inbox. So I decided to try and find some of these producers myself and do interviews with them. So I went onto Facebook, I searched up their names and tried to find as many people as I could. I was actually really surprised to find out how many people are on Facebook, and it became one of the most important tools for my entire career. Since I was one of the few EDM journalists at the time, I was able to secure a lot of fantastic interviews with people I had never even dreamed of talking to. Along the way, I met a lot of fantastic talents, and that generated long-term friendships that I still cherish to this day. For producers, networking is a little bit harder because even the inboxes of up-and-coming producers can be extremely chaotic. The key here is to find something that you can offer that not other people can. The prerequisite for this is having a well-curated social media presence. And so for me, this means just at least not having overly offensive content on there, even by the most laid-back standards. On Facebook, don't pile up that bio segment with all the places that you sign. Try and be more selective with the brands and companies that you associate with. So on Instagram, you want to have a few nicely edited photos of yourself, and if you're one of those like faceless or anonymous projects, at least have some nicely edited photos of the artwork or your setup or anything like that that shows people that you care about your image. If you're trying to reach out to someone who recently had a major label release, you can safely bet that their inbox was probably a little bit jam-packed at the time. So they'll likely be more selective about the friend requests they accept or the messages that they respond to. Even if you're a small producer, having this polished social media profile can push you over the edge and give those people that you're trying to reach out to a reason to respond to you. For the messages themselves, especially when you're writing into someone's personal Facebook or their Instagram DMs, you want to be as considerate of their time as possible. And in doing so, you want to give them the information that they need up front. Now, the caveat to this is that you don't want to send them your music out of the gate. You want to get permission from them first before you send them that SoundCloud or Dropbox link. Now, some people are more formal than others. Like, they want you to go through the entire, how are you, how are you doing, a little bit about yourself, stuff like that. And other people are just cut straight to the chase. You can tell a little bit about this based on their public posts, but to play it safe, you should always try to be formal and polite up front. Basically, the TLDR of this whole thing is to just be human and present a professional image of yourself on the accounts that you're using to reach out to people, and treat everyone with respect and be considerate of their time. So a little bit about my experiences as being a label manager. I'm actually the 5th person to have run Loca Recordings, and I was tapped to be the label manager after being an A&R there for about 5 months or so. I tell people that being a label manager for a brand like Loca is playing the label game on easy mode because they have the branding, they have some credibility, and existing fans considering how long they've been around. Fortunately, the previous owners positioned Loca to be a serious player in the festival music industry, which gave me a huge leg up and a huge platform to jump off of. Nevertheless, it was still a lot of work even for an underground label. There are different ways to run a label. Some people choose to have a larger team and delegate jobs out to various members, but I chose to take on the bulk of responsibility for myself. Personally, I chose to focus on the artists themselves and social media, but there are so many other things to think about, like sending promos to DJs and curators, PR pushes, handling the contracts, managing distribution, and then dealing with any other miscellaneous opportunities or problems that arise during this process. Needless to say, between being a full-time student, running a music label, and my blog, I was pretty busy at the time. From the outside, you can see how hard a label is working based on their outputs. Like, you can see if they're doing individualized banners, if they have a full graphics package, if they're putting out original videos, if their artworks are unique and have individualized elements to them, or if they're just pulling a template out. Basically, you can see how well they're performing based on their output and their social media channels. So you want to make sure that you're signing with a label that can handle the responsibilities involved with pushing a release. So about Loca Recordings specifically, I'll go into a little bit of story time. So through my blog, the QR Network, I was in contact with artists that had signed to Loca, and eventually all this connection and messaging led me to the owner at the time, which was Lucas. After doing some write-ups about the history of the label and interviewing some of his artists, as well as the weekly recap segment that I was doing for a separate publication, EDM Reviewer, he tapped me to be the A&R for Loca Recordings because of my the time that I had it back then, as well as my critical ear, which came through in the reviews that I posted. So he and I worked really closely. I was checking all the demos in the inbox and doing my best to give positive feedback and treating each demo as if I was writing them a review. And then of course passing along the ones that were viable to Lucas for approval. And so throughout this time I was able to learn more about what it meant to run a label, some of the responsibilities, and some of the challenges that came along with it. Once he sold the label later on to Peter, Peter then in turn sold it to a larger company, and when he sold to that larger company, then that's when I became the label manager. So Peter was running another label called Recordings at the time, which was focusing more on progressive and pop and songs of that nature. So we were working then to sort of unite Loca and Expose to have a multifaceted approach to tackling the music industry. Between us, we shared an A&R team, but I grew my own team up to 10 producers because I wanted to have as much on-the-record feedback and connections as possible. And so having all those A&R listed on our SoundCloud profile showed people who was associated with the label and how they could get in contact with them. Then through those producers, they were able to get feedback directly from them, and if the track was good enough, it would come up to me and I would decide to sign it or get some more opinions on whether or not it was good enough. However, at the time, Big Room was going through a sort of rough patch where major labels weren't signing some tracks that I felt were true gems. And this left a lot of talented producers with golden IDs just sitting on their hard drive waiting to be released. And so either they could self-release or they could sign with us. Unfortunately, I was able to convince a lot of them to put their tracks on Loca, and we did our best to push them to a very passionate audience, and at the same time showing this audience that we were building a community of festival music producers that all loved the genre as much as they did. So one of the things that the team and I would always go back and forth on and argue about was the frequency of releases. I thought that having more releases would be better because it would allow us to tap more artists and tap into those fan bases, whereas they wanted me to focus on just one release a week and putting everything into that. But considering where the label was at the time and how many followers we had, I felt that bringing as many people into the Loca family would be the best way to grow the label, because whenever we signed music from them and their fans would see our branding, then they would eventually get exposed to our branding in so much that they would realize that Loca was the home for festival music and that they could turn to us for quality festival music. Now, the event of Spotify has decreased the influence of a label, because back when SoundCloud was a thing, you could follow the label directly and see all of their releases. But on Spotify, you don't have this option to follow a label without going and adding their releases only playlist to your own personal account. And sometimes they don't even update this, so it's very difficult to connect these releases together aside from artworks. So that's why I wanted to focus so heavily on social media, because this way our releases and our music and our artists would be part of our fans' daily lives. At our peak, our engagement rate on Instagram was a whopping 20%, which is almost 4 times the industry average of 4 to 5%. A lot of that growth and engagement came from singling out and highlighting artists who deserve this platform. Fortunately, you can see all the work that me and the team put in publicly. You can see it on our Facebook, our Instagram, and of course in the releases that we put out, which is available on SoundCloud and Spotify, and we actually kept our Spotify playlist updated every time that a new track came out. So on there you can see exactly which artists we felt were on their way to the top and were putting in the hard work and deserve to have their music released and shared with our audience, however small or big it was for each release. So our messaging was simple. Festival music is alive and well, and the producers that we were signing are the ones that people should be watching because they're on the way to the top. So at the time, like I keep mentioning, Big Room was in a rough patch, and the fans of that genre needed to see this messaging and know that there was a label and a team that was working to deliver this quality music that they were looking for. So even though we're talking about how it's sort of a rough patch, I wanted to single out rave culture as being a stellar example of combining branding, stellar releases, and a sense of family, because they have all those 3 things and they have the streams to back it, and they're just doing amazing work over there. The story about why I left Loca might be best told at a different time, but the only thing that you need to know is that the same passion that I channeled into Loca is now being placed into my new label, Intensity Recordings. I partnered up with some fantastic individuals to make this label even more impactful to the festival music scene. The problem with being a label nowadays is that the streams and the social engagement don't necessarily correlate with each other. This goes for artists as well, as you'll see artists that have hundreds of thousands of monthly listeners barely even crack 1,000 followers on Instagram, with engagement rates that are even lower. You need to approach it with 2 strategies. You need to have one for Spotify to get those streams, and you need to have one for your social media to convert those Spotify listeners over to your socials and engulf them in your ecosystem. So the idea of storytelling and value added is what defines success in the music industry today. Of course, streams are important, and as long as you have the money to invest for the connections to push your songs through, you'll be able to get as many streams as you can afford. But the key is to capitalize on those people that you're reaching. This means establishing a social media presence that gives people something more than just, your face or just sharing when you release songs. You need to give them a little bit more insight into your life, your creative process, your goals, your aspirations, and even your failures, because that makes them feel a little bit closer to you and will more likely cause them to have a deeper connection with your music. In the end, the music always has to come first because that's what people came here for. It's up to you to create a world around your music for people to get lost in and engage with you. From there, you can offer them experiences like concerts or items they'll actually want, like t-shirts or branded gear. Now more than ever, success is defined by the amount of time, effort, and money that you put into your passion. A label plays a large role in that, as you can go into a label's family and their successes will become yours, in a sense. But it's also entirely possible to go at this independently and be equally, if not more successful, and forming your own brand and platform to catapult your music and maybe even start your own label one day. So that's all I really had to say about the topic. I hope that you guys learned something. And if you are a fan of festival music, I hope that you'll check out our upcoming label, Intensity Recordings, on Instagram, Facebook, SoundCloud, Spotify. We'll be launching May 29th. Thank you again to Quarantine Producer Talks for inviting me to do this. I hope you all are staying safe, and I'll catch you all later.